Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it, midweek editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right. We're loaded up, man. Excited to spend time with Mike Babcock. Babber's going to be with us, Mr. Husker Football. Get his take on Indiana and the Big Red. Mike Schuchart with us from Wilderness Ridge Golf. We'll get Shuey to get out his crystal ball for Nebraska football Saturday night. And then Matt Millen, of course, the old Raider, the old Washington and 49er, four-time Super Bowl champion, old Penn State linebacker. Matt Millen's been doing a lot of Big Ten Network action for quite a few years. He'll be roaming the press box on Saturday night, part of the BTN Network crew. Here, we'll get his take on the Big Red and the project ahead for whoever is coaching Nebraska. That's in the 5 o'clock hour. Evan Bland with us. And then a Jock Doc. Numbers to get in with us today can join us. Encouraged to do so at 466-3776. 466-3776. Toll free, where you can hear us around the state. 1-800-825-5865. You can email Chris at HailVarsity.com and watch us stream in on ESPN Lincoln's Twitter, on Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio, and Facebook Live with ESPN Lincoln. Also, find Elijah on Twitter at Herbal Essence, myself, Chris Schmidt, at Schmidt_radio. I think we got all of the appetizers out of the way. I think we can dive in. And Elijah, you look at the line, you look at the numbers, and then you look at the messaging today from Whipple. You look at the messaging today from Bill Busch, both coordinators. It's really about no quit. And it can go one of two ways, right? What am I being told? What's the media being told by a coach or athletic director or somebody in power? Is it the truth or is it the opposite of what's going on? Okay? That's always where I go. It's either straight from the horse's mouth, or we're going to say what we need to say, but here's what's really going on. The opposite is true. And we'll see. We'll see Saturday night. We'll see the rest of the season. But we'll see what Nebraska football is made of. And there's been a lot of teams and a lot of tough spots and a lot of transition, and too many times to count the last 2 decades of seasons gone awry and football players and teams having to fight through adversity. Makes you stronger, makes you better, makes you able to deal with life. But, man, when it comes to the fairy tale college experience, not a lot of Nebraska teams have had the opportunity to go 4 or 5 years here in Lincoln without major change, be it your position group or your head coach or your athletic director or both, or expectations, living up to expectations. Right now, I think expectations are pretty low for this football team just because of what's happened. And then there's the question of, all right, I don't think you can question effort. That's us. I don't think you're going to be able to question the effort, but, man, what's the talent look like for this team? What's the depth going to be for this football team? So some emails to get into today, and we'll spend time with Mike Babcock here in a little bit. The question is out there about some of the names in coaching, right? So we'll have some response from Chad and Kevin according to Kaz and his comments on Tim Allen yesterday. But Matt emails in, and this is a name that's been out there, Elijah. You have Jamie Chadwell. He's Coastal Carolina. Why is Nebraska too good for Jamie Chadwell? The local media seems like they won't say his name out of fear he'll get hired. Why is he not good enough? His spread option attack would give Nebraska several advantages. You have the advantage, that +1 with the quarterback run, right? The quarterback run game has always been successful, been very successful the past 50 years. And we have more gap scheme blocking. That's something Rob Zadika says helps out the O-line, makes their job easier. We'll talk to Rob about that tomorrow because Rob will be on with us. But it also stresses the opponent, and they've got to make special considerations when preparing the play. That's what was awesome about the Osborne offense. Well, the option offense was something you didn't see every day, and you had a difference maker at quarterback more times than not, and then you could murder teams off of play action. From what I understand, everyone's favorite coach of the week is Dave Aranda. He likes the zone stuff. And from what I've seen, we've not had an O-line the last 7 years that's dominant enough to run zone all the time. Let's not try to out Ohio State. Let's be Nebraska. Let's be a more modern version of Nebraska.
Well, isn't that what Scott Frost was supposed to bring here? Wasn't it supposed to be that Nebraska power, that old Nebraska merged with the new college football, the new schemes on offense? Well, what I'll say, I don't think Jamie Chadwell is a bad head football coach.
I think he's a really good coach.
But he's back burner because Nebraska's looking deeper than scheme with their next head coach. Every single scheme in college football works with the right personnel. Every single scheme. It's not coming down to scheme with who Nebraska wants to hire. It's coming down to the things they do off the field, recruiting, how they can manage.
Can they win in the Big Ten? Do they know how to win in the Big Ten?
So it comes down, and it's deeper than things off the field. I would go as far as to say, for the most part, just about every offensive scheme that is currently running college football could find success in the Big Ten if you have the right people to run that scheme. And if you can make the right adjustments to your scheme to make it work in the Big Ten. Because every single scheme is going to need slight tweaks based on the opposition you're playing. And the Big Ten, especially with the defense around, is a different beast. So there's nothing wrong with what Jamie Chadwell does with his scheme. I just don't think he's, A, proven as a program builder at a place like Nebraska, and B, I'm not sold on the other things. Can he come to Nebraska and recruit? Recruiting in the Carolinas is a different beast than recruiting in Nebraska.
You got a lot of talent in the Carolinas. You got an abundance of talent. I think he's a really good coach.
I do too.
And I think he'll be a really good coach at an ACC or an SEC. I think he'll be really good. I just don't know that you can go get somebody that does not have major Power 5 experience, and I don't think you can go get somebody who doesn't have major Big Ten experience or have connections to the Big Ten. I think that's very, very important. You got to hire in the Big Ten or be from the Big Ten in some form or aspect, either as a coordinator, as a player, and then be able to go grasp and grab some of those other guys. Is this a name we need to be talking more about? Lane Kiffin.
No.
Just hear me out. This was Lane at his presser. And maybe it's just a signal to Nebraska to reach out so he can make more money off the SIP. He's done well. He's grown up. He was born in Lincoln. Right. Lane's doing really well. Brilliant offensive mind. A lot of talent around where he's at. But that's a fair question. Is Ole Miss a destination spot? I mean, is that where guys want to go and coach the rest of their career, or is it a stepping stone, mile marker, pit stop on the way to a bigger, better job? And here's Lane Kiffin when it comes to crowd support and fans.
You know, when you come back out and you run out the tunnel and it looks like, you know, a high school game playing in a college stadium, you can't let that affect you. I mean, you know, there's psychology to that, obviously. There's a home field advantage for a reason. And you know, when it goes the other way, you kind of have that feeling, you know, that, man, are we still really playing in a game here? You know, the players have to fight that. So, again, we use that as a learning lesson for our guys. So, if that's the case, that's the case. But, I mean, I'm I'm worried about what I can control. I've tried social media in here for 2 years, so, we'll worry about what we can control, and that's getting our players ready to play.
So, Nebraska's got a stadium that's sold out still. It's not what it once was, where it was elbow to elbow for 4 quarters. You got to go wander out to a tailgate or a watering hole because you've seen some bad football. You don't return. You've seen some tough losses. But for the most part, it starts out full. You don't got to worry about the fan base or the crowd having your back. That's just not a subtle shot by Lane at, all right, you guys, my guys got to feed off your energy. We're giving you stuff to cheer about. It can't look like we can shoot a cannon through the student section because you want to go party and have a good time, at the Grove. You've been to the Grove, so you can talk to me about the seating options versus the fun and festivities of the Ole Miss tailgate scene.
See, I went pre-Lane when I was hanging out in the Grove. I was pre-Lane whenever they were losing by like 70 to Bama.
Okay.
So
really, that was you Freeze before there.
No, who's the guy in between?
Ed was there, Orgeron. That was way you weren't even born yet when Ed was there. Maybe not.
Let's look it up. Or
you had some guy.
It may have been Lane's first year.
Okay.
Oh no, he was at Florida Atlantic until 2019. I went in 2019.
Okay, so who was at Ole Miss then? For
the
100.
old Google machine.
Let's get the old Google. Well, but is Lane Kiffin a name that excites you?
Matt Luke was the head coach.
Yeah, Matt Luke. Now he's an offensive line coach. Yeah,
that was it was bad football back then.
Yeah, Matt Luke put out. He had a lot of fires to put out. Bill Busch not looking at the situation like that for Nebraska. We'll get to him in a minute.
Can I just say really fast with those Lane comments? That seems less like a shot at the fans of Ole Miss, and more to me, it was the last statement where he said, I've been trying on social media, I've been doing what I can do. It seemed to me like he was calling for his athletic department for some help, saying like, hey, let's find a way to get some fans in here because I have given you the good product, and it doesn't come down to a head football coach to try to fill the stands. I think he's calling for more support from the athletic department. They get great support on filling Swayze for their baseball games. Athletic department does great with that. I think he's calling out to his athletic department saying like, hey, if you don't want to be little brother in the SEC with fans, give me, or with our program, give me some. I've made the talent and I've made it work on the football field. Now, if you want to really step up and be a real SEC program, it comes down to you guys to sell this place a little bit more.
I would be surprised if Lane's there in 5 years.
I'd be surprised if he's there in 5 years. I would agree with that. But I don't think he's leaving in the near future.
I think his next step is either a monster raise there, because they finished top 3, right? Hugh Freeze was the guy to take down Saban and Bama. But I think the NFL, maybe he gets back to the NFL. He was real young when he was in Oakland, when he got that NFL head job. Bill Busch weighs in here. And he has a can-do attitude with Nebraska football. Busch, the interim defensive coordinator, and he's not crying in his beer. He thinks he's excited about the opportunity tonight and the rest of the season.
I think an advantage has been for the spot that I'm in, and it's not a tough spot. I don't have to. I get to. It's a great opportunity, so it's not a tough spot. Everybody's it's a tough spot. That's my ass. It's not a tough spot. Just go out and coach. That's what you signed up to do, so it's not a big deal. But the positive about it is that I was around these guys. So I've coached. I've coached the O-line when they're in the score team on the field goal team. I've coached D-line when they're on field goal block. I've coached all these positions. So I've been around the team for a long time, so everyone knows who I am. Everybody knows who's been in the rooms with me. They kind of know how I operate a little bit, so that helps.
More from Busch here on his first job as the interim coordinator.
The first thing we worked on is how to get lined up fast and how to play as simple as we can. I'd love to play one defense. Everyone in the country would love to play one defense. And that's, hey, we play this and we do this, and that wraps it up for us. There's a lot more to it because there's so many situations like we talk about all the time. I use rooms in a house. I learned this from Coach Gruden. It's like, hey, first and second down, you're in the kitchen. Everything goes on in the kitchen. Third down, fourth down, that's a living room. It's a little bit different type of deal like that. The attic, you don't use it much. That's goal line. There's all these different situations that come up. So we try to address things in different phases with them right there. But we are trying to do everything we can to be able to make it as simple as we can to make sure, hey, we get lined up and get our feet set and be able to go. We felt that there was some things that always can improve on communication as we scream at them all the time. And I say scream, we teach at them. And the same thing in special teams is that communication breeds confidence. So if we have the right communication, we know we've made the right call. Our communication will breed confidence, and we'll build ourselves up from there.
Think about how much faster Nebraska can play if they know what they're doing, if there's real confidence in what's being asked of them.
Well, what I think this defense needs not only is confidence, but it just needs a spark. It needs some energy, something to give them life early in this game on Saturday to make them, say, you know what, we're not as bad as everyone's been saying.
We can do it.
We can do it.
You can do it.
What's that spark going to be? Is it going to be an interception? Is it going to be a Waka Flocka concert on Friday night? I mean,
a fumble is where I would go. Give me live music.
Don't sleep on Waka.
I am unaware, to sound like a crusty old man, I am unaware of what you're all hyped about Friday.
Waka
Are you going to get him on with us down at the Single Barrel or not?
I could try. I mean, this was like middle school Elijah's when Waka Flocka was real big.
Ah, okay. So that translates to affordability. Hey, Waka Flocka. When I hear Waka, I think of Fozzie Bear. Waka, Waka, Waka. That's me. Sorry. Mike Babcock, Mr. Nebraska football on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. We say hi to Mike Babcock from HailVarsity.com and magazine. When we talk about Currency, for all your equipment financing needs, go Currency at MD Babs on Twitter. Mike, it's Indiana week. How we doing?
Mike, you're muted.
Mike, you got your mic muted, bud.
I only say things of substance when I have it muted. I had great insight there, and now I unmuted it, and I'm at a loss again.
No, you're awesome. You're always substantive. Some new faces potentially. Let's go there. Does new mean better for Nebraska potentially on the defensive side of the ball? Nebraska's doesn't sound like they're going to be afraid to go young here.
No. I was at the availability this morning, and I really thought that Bill Busch came across as enthusiastic, and he gave the players a lot of credit for their ability to go through what he said was adversity, not just on the field, but in the coaching situation, and so I think that whoever gets an opportunity to get on the field on Saturday night is going to give the effort that you need. That's the thing. You need the effort, but you also need the attention to detail, the fundamentals, and I hope that that's there.
The effort sometimes was waning depending on who you ask towards the end of the Oklahoma game. And I don't play ball. I just know that I can't run as fast or tackle. So I'm the last to criticize, but you hear some former players, you hear Coach McBride talk about loafs, right? And it was out of hand, but he's still fighting until the very end. I think from an energy standpoint, that seems to have been a big focus, not only on Mickey, but also Busch. And that is something that they can do and have done at a high level, Mike, throughout their careers, motivate. And Nebraska's in a big-time position of motivation. They need it moving forward, not just for Saturday night, but the rest of the season.
Yeah, and it's tougher to lay it all out there to the end when you've gone through some of the things that Nebraska's gone through. I think it does get in your head. You might say that it doesn't get in your head, but it does. And I think that's where Nebraska is right now. I think it's the mindset is part of it, and I think that we see it with Mickey Joseph and with Bill Busch and Mark Whipple is they're trying to get that back in the players' heads that, hey, we fight to the end. We have an opportunity. We can win. Because right now it's just really difficult for a player to not get discouraged whether he acknowledges it or not, how do you avoid that when things have gone the way they have with Nebraska and changes now have been made again and you've gone through this process before? How difficult is that for somebody that's 18, 19, 20, 21 years old?
Well, Mike, I hate to go all the way back to the Oklahoma game, but did you see a team that was defeated on the field, like a team that just played without energy, or do you see a team that was just outclassed?
Well, I think they were outclassed. There was no question about that. But it still gets in your head when people start talking about, well, Adrian Martinez went down to Kansas State and Kansas State beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You get in that. It affects your mind whether you acknowledge it or not. And Buford talked about, he doesn't go on social media. He doesn't want any part of that. He doesn't know what's going on. It almost has to come to that point, because if you do pay attention to any of that outside noise, it's going to be there, and it's going to affect how you look at things when you get on the field.
Mike, as you look at this matchup, are you thinking a lot of points and both defenses will be spread out and spent? I know Nebraska depth is going to be very key because of what Indiana wants to do tempo-wise.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some points scored. And it didn't surprise me really that Nebraska opened as a favorite. I mean, I think still if you can get that mindset going and get in the right frame of mind against a team, and you're playing at home, and you've got coaches that are having a lot of enthusiasm and are see it from your point of view, I think Nebraska has an opportunity to win that game on Saturday night, but it's probably going to take some points to do it. I think that's probably right.
Mike Babcock is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Read him with Hail Varsity Magazine's been covering the Huskers for years. And Mike, I want to get your take. The defense, obviously, we know their struggles and what they need to do on Saturday in order to give this offense a chance to win the football game. But in your opinion, the lines of scrimmage have been bad this season on both sides of the ball. In your opinion, which side of the ball with the lines of scrimmage, offensive line or defensive line, are going to be more key for this Husker team on Saturday to go out and get a win?
Well, for me, if we're talking about there are going to be points put up by both teams, then I'm going to say Nebraska's offensive line, which has been restructured a little bit now because of a couple of injuries and how is that going to play out? Now I know Turner Corcoran has a game. He has experience at tackle, and he started the last game, I think. But I think it's going to depend on the offensive line getting the job done for Nebraska to get that offense going. If you're going to get into a game where it's going to be some points are going to be scored.
Mike, going to switch gears briefly as Fred Hoiberg met the media yesterday. A couple of different players, Breidenbach as well. And what's your outlook? What's your early feel with the makeup here? You got Derek Walker back, and that's really about it. A bunch of new faces, but Fred said all the right things yesterday about this team and this chemistry that he feels pretty good about so far.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, can he get the players to mesh? That's the key, because I think you've got some talent there. Derek Walker's back, Komanaga's back, and he had a really good with the Japanese team. He led the team in scoring. I think he's got potential to be a factor. C.J. Welcher, they said he's trimmed down, doesn't even look like the same player. But and Breidenbach is back. So you've got some players returning, but you've got to mix in some really good players, I think. And you know how hard that can be. I mean, sometimes, and Fred Hoiberg has experience with that kind of thing, but you just don't know how they're going to mesh. And I think that's the big key to men's basketball going into the season is how do all these new guys mesh? Does it work that way? Fred Hoiberg said that it's kind of everybody is looking to win, not being selfish in practice. They're not seeing that, so maybe it's going to work.
Now, Mike, over the past couple of years, I think it's been pretty evident to sports writers, fans alike, that Nebraska's had some deficiencies down in the low block, down in the paint. And Waka Flocka, he's coming Friday. And Schmidt, we hit this first segment, but I'll hit it again here. He's got a song. Probably his biggest song is called Hard into Paint.
Okay.
Is that the key?
The letter
Mike?
N?
What?
Hard in the paint.
Yes.
The letter N?
No, it's actually I-N.
Okay.
But
I didn't know if it was.
It's D-A for duh.
Duh. No, I know that.
Duh paint. Yeah. Now, is that a key, though, Mike, in your mind for Husker basketball this season? Is finding some guys that can be post presence just to be able to match up with some of those bigger Big Ten teams?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Elijah. I think that is a key. I think it's been a key. And does Nebraska have the size to be strong in the inside? Because you got to be that way in the Big Ten. It's a little bit like being able to run the ball in football. It's the same thing. You got to be able to do something inside. It's been difficult for Nebraska. Maybe this is the time where Nebraska gets it done.
Mike, real quick, when we talk coaching search, and I want to get a thought from you, and I know you're a Mickey guy, but there's also the national search part. Is there a name that has picked up either intrigue or some steam from you that's out there here?
Well, you're right, Mickey, for me, and I don't think that the rest of the season is probably enough to really evaluate, given the circumstances of his situation. And then another person, again, I'm biased. Lance Leipold is the guy that I would like to see. If it weren't Mickey, I'd like to see if Nebraska could get him away from Kansas, because he does have some Nebraska connections, and he's done a great job, I think, with Kansas. And he did well at Buffalo. He did super at his alma mater, Wisconsin Whitewater. I think he has the kind of experience. The same thing that I like about Mickey is that Mickey has had so many different levels of experience in coaching, and his ability to recruit is very significant. But yeah, Lance Leipold is a guy that I really like.
Do you worry about gettability with Lance?
That's a good question, because he's just in his second year at Kansas, and maybe he feels like he has some responsibility there. But I know at some point he probably would have liked to have had an opportunity at the Nebraska job. So never say never, I guess, in this college football world with any of these coaches.
Mike Babcock's with us here. And Mike, one last thought here before we get you out. It was announced last week. The Grateful Dead, at least what's remaining of them, still touring, along with the Dead and Company tour, going on their final tour next summer, a stadium tour yet again. Your reaction to
anywhere near us we can all go?
I think they're going to Colorado.
Babbers, are you in?
Well,
I think they're going to Colorado. I think they are going to Colorado, which is the last time that I saw. My son and I went to Colorado to see them in Denver.
But Mike, your reaction to the Grateful Dead, though, I mean, it's been an era, I guess, for them. They've been touring for years now, and they're finally hanging it up.
Yeah, so they say. Maybe. I thought it was interesting. I got some information about how you could actually stream it if you didn't want to actually go to these places. You could stream these concerts as well. So, it's quite the deal. Quite a little bit of a surprise, I guess, but and a nice new logo. So they'll be selling T-shirts and all that sort of thing. But probably the last time around for those guys.
We're going to get the old truckster loaded up. Mike is riding with. Elijah, you're going with. We'll get Kaz back. Kaz has got that Grateful Dead shirt.
Yeah.
Big Grateful Dead fan, and we'll just all make a road trip of it.
We'll truck him.
Rude to go with us, too.
Okay, so you'll get a hold of Barrett? All right.
But he's probably going to go whether we do or not.
Let's get a big old Volkswagen van for old time's sake.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Babbers, we'll see you on Saturday. Thank you much.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
There he is, Mike Babcock with HailVarsity.com and magazine. Mike Schuchart on the way. Matt Millen from BTN next hour.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Mike. Getting choked up thinking about Mike Babcock. Wow. Matt Millen on the way. Another Mike we love, Mike Schuchart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey, I can't thank you enough. I told you Saturday, and I'm telling you again that it was so awesome to see you and spend time out at Wilderness Ridge. I had just a dream Saturday. And Shuey, Elijah, you're going to get a kick out of this. Shuey walks up to me and has a big old grin and gives me a hug and looks me in the eye. He's like, now, Schmidt, don't you go setting a course record the other way. Oh, Shuey, then you patted me on the back and just shook your head. Man, that was fun. That was a lot of fun on Saturday. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Did you make any birdies that day?
No, I did not. I did not. I had about four, I had four pars though. Okay.
Nice.
Did you hit more fairways or trees?
No, my first 6 tee shots were either all in the fairway or on a couple of the par threes. I hit the green like on the first try. So I inherited my dad's driver, right, and I just got in a rhythm of just great setup, footwork, easy swing, and I drove it as far as I've ever driven. I mean, they were just straight down the middle. Like the guys I golfed with, then it faded. I mean, and it wasn't aim and juice. I'm a wuss. I just faded, and then I think 14 absolutely abused me, my friend.
Oh, you're not the only one that abuses.
No. But, Shuey, Wilderness Ridge, man, folks can get out there for fall golf, get a membership, do it today. It is pristine, my friend. As challenging as the weather has been between spring and into the summer, man, you guys did an awesome job. And it's so beautiful. The scenery is as much as the challenge. I mean, it's a challenging course, but it was so much fun.
Well, good. I'm glad you had a great time. It was a great day for golf, man. It was absolutely gorgeous out, and that makes it even that much better.
Well, we appreciate you. And so tell me here, Nebraska, if you were to equate Indiana to the 18 on the championship course, what hole is Indiana?
They got to be I would say they're our easiest hole.
Okay. So, in your opinion, which one is that?
Our easiest hole on the course would be probably number 6.
Okay, I did well on
5.
I did well on 6, actually.
See?
Yeah.
So, hopefully, we can play it like the easiest hole in the course, but who knows what's going to happen.
What are you feeling like? I mean, you've seen the team get about a week off. You've had a change with Chenander and Frost, and now you got new voices, and you've got Busch trying to simplify, Shuey, with where the defense is.
I mean, I really like Mickey a lot. I like what he says. I like how he commands a press conference, and he says all the right things, but like the old saying says, talk is cheap, actions speak louder than words. So it's like, can they put their stuff on the field? It's nice they had a week off. That'll help them kind of implement some stuff and get a little more comfortable. You hope. I mean, I'm rooting for Mickey a lot because I like him a lot. Mm-hmm. I think he interacts with the players really well. I think they really like him. They want to play for him. So hopefully that translates. They got some talent. They got to get it in the right positions and get them to believe a little more in what that is they are capable of doing. So who knows, man? Every week is a new eye-opening experience. Let's put it that way.
Let's play the name game here for a second. Who is Mike Schuchart's leader in the clubhouse to be Nebraska's next head coach?
Oh boy. I'm going to throw a name way out there. Mike Tomlin.
No. Don't ask him. Don't ask him.
I like that, though. Did you ever see the thing with Mike Tomlin earlier this year where he got the whole team black Air Force Ones? Schmitty?
Oh, yeah.
No, that's pretty cool.
Got the entire team black Air Force Ones because it's a quality of being a menace. If you wear black Air Force Ones, you're most likely the All Blacks. You're most likely a menace. And you want his team to play like menaces this year.
That's pretty good. No, Tomlin's awesome. He ain't going to college, should he? But I love the name. As far as the name game, do you know much or have a feel on Leipold or Aranda? I mean, the more I think about it, I think it's tough to get Aranda. We had a really good tweet in about KU. Extending and putting a nasty buyout in with Leipold. So
yeah,
I don't know.
guarantee you they're got to do something like that. They're going to be scared to death that they're going to lose him. I mean, he's a common sense choice. I mean, he's got some Nebraska ties. It's like it's just so hard to know what the pulse is of guys. What they want to do. I would think he would be a logical choice. I think he would want to come here. I mean, it's obviously a bigger school than Kansas. I mean, the upside is tremendous. Mm-hmm. So it's like, is that a guy that you want? Is that a guy? I mean, he's got a proven track record, kind of. He's done it everywhere he's been, but has he done it at a top Power 5 team?
No, that's the thing. It's like what he's doing at Kansas is impressive because of where he started in that Big 12 mix, right? You just got to get somebody that can come win in the Big 10 too. That's the big thing.
That's the thing. You got to have somebody that knows the Big 10. Mm-hmm. They can play in the Big Ten, knows how to coach against those coaches that are in the Big Ten. The coaches in the Big Ten they're the best in the world.
Yeah,
I mean, these
really
guys are good. I mean, and they take their football very serious on how they coach it, how they treat it, how they train it, their expectations. Because it has to be. I mean, it's a top to bottom. It's an incredible league with incredible coaches and talent. And you have to kind of know the style to be able to play in that league. So, I mean, you have to get – that's where Leipold is a little bit I'm not that high on him. Mm-hmm. I mean, just because he hasn't done it there. You need somebody – O'Brien's name is out there, which is what he did at Penn State with that mess. Mm-hmm. But he knows the Big Ten, know. Rule, I like Rule's name a lot. I think he's one that you could possibly get. But, I mean, who knows?
It just hinges on if he stays alive in Carolina or not. Shuey, how can folks get in touch with you for some lessons, some gear, for sure a membership? And real quick, about 30 seconds, but what's happening down at Wilderness?
Well, we got the Corn Ferry first stage qualifying going on this week. So they're just got done with the second round, so that's exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah, you see some incredibly talented players out here, and you look down the road, 3 years ago, we had Scotty Scheffler here playing.
That's awesome.
And Will Zalatoris and Abraham Answer. So it's pretty cool to watch those kids when they're kids kind of play out here, go through the qualifying, and, become who they are now. So that's always exciting.
Shuey, we appreciate it much, brother. We'll talk next week.
Always appreciate you having me on.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for time here on Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Some comments here from Matt on StreamYard we'll get to. More emails, Chris@HailVarsity.com. Matt Millen, part of BTN, coming up in 10 minutes. Reminder about Red Zone tickets, selling fun since 2001. You have a game you want to get to? Do you have seats you can't use and need to sell? Red Zone Tickets buys and sells tickets for all types of events. That's Husker football. And, of course, Nebraska volleyball, NFL action. I see Elijah's wheels turning right now to get out there to Donkeyland and maybe go see a Denver game. Creighton Hoops is going to be fantastic this year and a good shot for Nebraska basketball to have maybe a bit of a bounce back. Concerts, theater, College World Series. Hey, it's about experience, it's about memories, and it's about authenticity. That's what Red Zone tickets have. They're located in Omaha. They're reliable. They're local, right? They're your neighbor, and they've got an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. 100% guarantee on all ticket orders. You'll receive authentic tickets and experiences you won't forget. So get ready to get the red pen of death out and cross off that bucket list item. Create the memories that will last that lifetime. Do so with the events through your friends at Red Zone Tickets. RedZoneTickets.com. Matt writes in here, recruiting question. We all agree that the 500-mile radius needs a fence up, right? Who can do that? The closest we've come in modern history is under Bo. No one else, even Frost, got the job done. Hey, Bill Busch is your guy for your 500-mile radius. Think about this. Think of Jared Kanek. Think of him. He's out of Goodland or somewhere in Kansas, right? He was the backup safety that came up and made a ton of plays with Oklahoma just 2 weeks ago. I think he was number 8 or number 9. He's a hybrid. He's a safety linebacker hybrid. And Nebraska was kind of in on him, but kind of late on him.
Yeah, I think Nebraska still finished in the top 3.
Okay, but the point is Venables got him. Venables had him at Clemson, okay, and brought him to Oklahoma. Venables saw Simmons that was at Clemson, that hybrid that was a first-round pick for Arizona, the Omaha kid that ended up moving to Kansas City because his folks worked for Nebraska Furniture Mart. Again, another Kansas City project. Venables is a Kansas guy. He's there. I think that's just an example of a national guy that has roots in the Midwest. Busch is that guy. Busch can go all over the country because he's been all over the country. But Busch is very effective in the 500-mile radius.
I think the first step, though, in locking up the kids within the 500-mile radius is to win.
No,
that's step number one. You can have the best recruiters on your staff. If your team's going 3-9 every single year, those kids are going to be looking elsewhere. They want to go have success. They want to go make it off to the NFL. Right now, Nebraska is not the program where you're going to have success and make it off to the NFL. So if you can start having success and sending dudes off to the NFL, it's going to be a lot easier to lock up the 500-mile radius. The closest, as Matt said, has been Bo. Why? Bo had success and he sent dudes to the NFL.
Yep, and they got developed, and guess what? When they were gone, there was somebody ready to come in and pick up the mantle. Matt Millen, BTN, next.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back in Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Big showdown Saturday night in Lincoln under the lights. BTN. Part of the broadcast is Hall of Famer Matt Millen, 4-time Super Bowl champ, great linebacker at Penn State. Matt, it's been a long time since we've had a chance to chat. Big Ten Media Days are once in a while in the old buffet line at Memorial Stadium. How have you been?
I'm doing pretty good, yeah. In fact, looking forward to this. I want to see these guys get back on track, and I think in Indiana, I think they're playing some pretty good football, so it'll be interesting to see with all the change that's happened.
Change being the word, and Nebraska's been through a bit of the ringer with just coaching change the last 2 decades. Matt, you know the Nebraska program well. You competed against them when you were playing at Penn State, and you've covered them, obviously, and you know, no Frost, no Chenander, and Mickey Joseph, a tall task. Defense is what you know, and Bill Busch has taken over as interim defensive coordinator. It just seems like Nebraska's been a step slow and not really they're just swimming, right? They're thinking too much. Do you see quite a bit of talent on the Nebraska defensive side of the ball as you've studied them a little bit? Do they have some of the horses to get it done?
Yeah, well, so in today's football, it's changed, right? Mm-hmm. So first thing you have to look at is, do you have a pass rusher? The answer is no. They don't. But they have a guy, in Garrett Nelson. I think Nelson's the one who gives you an effort, and he can beat you with on a second effort kind of thing. But when they're up front, they don't really have that guy who's just a speed burner and a guy who's just going to get you on your heels the whole time. So that's the first piece. Second thing you have to do is you have to have team speed, and they're not slow, they're not fast. And then I think the third thing is you have to be able to cover. And so if you can cover, and so they're young guys back there. Their corners are solid. You got a transfer in there and that Hill kid, and then I think is it Newsome? I don't remember.
Yep. Quentin Newsome's a good-sized kid.
Yeah, and so and that's your first group. So here's the big piece, right? You need depth. Because especially in a game like this where Indiana's going to go fast and Indiana's going to wear you out, and if you have just, two corners, they're going to wear your corners out. If you have two backers, they're going to wear them out because they're going to go fast. Now, here the challenge is to get them off the field as fast as you can, right? So if you can go 3 and out, you're okay. But if you don't, and they keep on running play after play after play, they're going to wear you out. So is there enough talent there? There's talent there. Is there enough? You don't have a too deep, so like what Ohio State would have, or so there's teams like that. So so you're kind of playing from behind a little bit.
Matt Millen with us, BTN. He'll be on the call Saturday night, Hail Varsity Radio. Matt, are you surprised it's gotten to this point with Nebraska?
I've always been a big fan of the Nebraska program. Am I surprised that it got here? Yes and no. Yes, because I just think it's a good program. I think it's one of those schools that, like, I think about, Johnny Rodgers and all the guys from that, and so it's not that anymore. Football's changing. Recruiting is the name of the game. You have to be able to get people on campus. I think that was one of the things that Scott was counting on, being able to get in there, and it was tough to bring him in. And if you did get a guy in and you got him on the track ready to be able to get there, then somebody comes in and takes them. And so now with the portal, it's even tougher. Back in the day when Devaney was keeping guys and they were just they had a system where they had this walk-on thing that, it wasn't truly a walk-on deal, but it was he kept them there, and he developed them, and then he had great teams, and so it's not that way anymore. It's tough. It's tough to recruit. It's tough to get kids there, and it's tough to keep them. So, so I think from that perspective, I think it's a hard one, but I still think Nebraska's a great program. It's got great tradition. It's one of those schools in the Big Ten that should shine, and it's struggling right now.
Yeah, Matt, one of the things that's really frustrated Husker fans over the past couple of years is recruiting rankings. You look at it and fans say, well, Nebraska's out-recruited Iowa this season or Minnesota this season, but it doesn't translate to wins. How you get wins in the Big Ten is with culture and team identity. And my question for you is, what kind of culture and team identity do you think Nebraska needs to have with whoever the next head coach ends up being moving forward to have success in the Big Ten?
Culture is interesting because culture changes with team to team, and coaches can form a culture or break a culture just like that. And so, the tradition of that place is the selling point. And so whoever comes in there next, whoever comes in there next is going to have to build their culture. Like Scott had to build his culture, and each previous coach before that had to build a culture. And so it's not like you're just carrying it on from one to the next. It's tough. Ultimately, it comes down to just recruiting. It's what it comes down to. And today's game of the nil world, which I'm not a big fan of, but that's the way it's gone, and that's the way it is. It's tough, and so it's just paying guys, and it's tough. It's hard to recruit in that. I don't like it because I think inevitably we're going to end up having pretty much like the NFL, 2 conferences, and you'll have the haves and the have-nots, and you're going to have to get a salary cap. You're going to have to do something. You have to put some kind of way to regulate this because I don't like the way it's going.
Matt Millen with us, couple more minutes, part of BTN and his coverage, of course, Saturday night, Nebraska and Indiana. You mentioned team culture. Can you enlighten us on the Oakland Raiders of the early 80s and just how much fun that was? I mean, I as a kid, I grew up watching NFL films. I loved Howie Long. I loved the Raider mystique, the renegade, right, kind of mentality. But, man, you got to live it. You got to live it and play some Super Bowls and win some big games.
Yeah, and so it was more of an attitude than a culture, okay. And that's part of culture. Mm-hmm. But it was one of those things where, look, Bob Nelson, who's a Nebraska guy, he's a Husker. He played beside me for, how many years Bobby and I were together? Probably 7 or 8 years there. And the attitude was, we're coming in. We were very, very talented, right? So you had Hall of Fame corners. You had outside backer Ted Hendricks in the Hall of Fame. You have Howie Long in the Hall of Fame. You have Mike Caines, Lester Hayes will be in the Hall of Fame. We had tons of guys. We had all pros everywhere. Rod Martin was a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro. Myself, Ted Hendricks, Howie, Lyle Alzado. I mean, Mike Haynes on the outside, Van McElroy behind us. I mean, we were really talented. You couldn't afford that team in today's football.
Okay.
But the attitude that they had was, look, we're going in, we're going to do what we want to do, and there's nothing you could do about it. And by the way, if you want to get into a fight, we're there for it. And so that was just the way we operated. It was a culture that I fit, and it was fun to do. And you can't do that anymore. Those days are long gone.
What about Alzado?
Lyle?
You're talking about like a team that's willing to fight. He fought Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that didn't go.
I think he ticked Ali off because at one point Ali decided to really fight him, and
yes.
I think he could have abused him if he wanted to. No, but Lyle, that was half that stuff. I mean, for me, Lyle was a good guy, and we got along really well. His kids, he had kids and his wife, and so we were over there quite a bit, and. But Lyle, the other part of Lyle was, we called him 3 Mile Lyle for a reason. You never knew when he was going to explode.
Matt Millen's with us. That's pretty good.
It's just it's a different time. It's a different league than it is now. That team couldn't play in today's league. You
guys just had to have a hell of a lot of fun, didn't you?
Well, there was a lot of that. Yeah, absolutely. That was a fun time, and it was. There was only a few teams that I was on that you could do this. When I was in San Francisco that first year in 1990, we could do this. In 83, we could do this. And in 83, 84, 85, right around in there, where the defense, we would just say, hey, it's time to go. We got to go. And we'd just change it. And we just up our game, and it was really fun to play. I mean, we could dominate a game just by willing it, and that was very, very rare.
I watched the documentary on John Madden. You were so close with John, weren't you?
Yeah, John was my guy. He was rare, and John was one of one. And for whatever reason, he kind of took a liking to me, and yeah, I miss him. I miss talking to him.
You got to go on the bus, didn't you, with him quite a bit?
Yeah, we'd be on the bus all my, and I would be. He'd have the no farting rule. I'd break it all the time.
I read the no fart and no dump rule. Correct?
Yeah, you got it. That's exactly right. Yeah, I just miss the guy. John was usually the smartest guy in the room. Mm-hmm. Very, very bright guy. He had a way of just breaking things down simplistically that anybody could follow it. And he was just a smart person. He was a good person, and I miss him. Actually, he and Al Davis, I miss talking to Al Davis a bunch too. He was another one really, really smart, and I miss them both.
Now, Matt, this is a bit timely here because my dad, he was a high schooler in Denver in the early 80s, and he has a lot of painful memories watching the Raiders come to Denver. And now we got the Broncos and the Raiders coming up on Sunday. Can you talk a little bit about that Raiders-Broncos rivalry?
Yeah, so if it's like the old Raider Broncos, it's going to be fun to play in because, well, it's not. Here's what it was, and I've told John Elway this many times. I thought John Elway was the best quarterback that we ever saw. And people, when they ask me why, I tell them this is the answer. We played the Denver Elways. They didn't have a running game. They had John. They didn't have great receivers. They had John. They didn't have a good offensive line. They had John. And they'd be competitive games every stinking time. And that guy, I don't know how he found a way to do it. We beat the living piss out of him. And he still found a way to get him in games. He was amazing. And when his skill level declined, they got a runner and they won Super Bowls. He was still that good. So a lot of respect for John Elway.
Matt Millen, part of BTN, Hall of Fame linebacker, 4-time Super Bowl champ, and, of course, great at Penn State. One name that's out there, and I'll let you go after this, Matt, and we'll see you Saturday night, Bill O'Brien, coordinator at Alabama, did good things but kind of got ran out in Houston. And, of course, you know how he elevated Penn State a little more than a decade ago. O'Brien in Nebraska, could that be a fit?
If Bill wants to take the job, Bill O'Brien will make any program better. I was really impressed with him when he came into Penn State because that was not easy to do.
Right.
You're following a legend in Joe Paterno, and there were all these expectations and the way things were done, and the certain culture was there, and I mean it was not easy. And Bill O'Brien came in there, and heck, I think they voted him Coach of the Year that year.
They did.
But he was he's a good X and O guy. He's a play caller. He's got some good Irish in him, so you know he's going to give a good fight. But ultimately, it comes down to this. If you can recruit, you got a chance.
Sure.
Because if my players are better than your players, we're going to win. The ones when my players are even to your players, coaching makes a big difference. And so he can get you better, but you still have to recruit.
Matt Millen. Matt, looking forward to seeing you Saturday night. Thanks for your time today. Good stuff from Matt Millen, part of BTN. He'll be on the call Saturday night. Nebraska-Indiana, his thoughts on the Big Red, what he's seen on film, what he thinks of the matchup, little Raider talk, the John Elway Pinata experience.
That was awesome. Thanks.
And then Matt Millen on Bill O'Brien. And Matt obviously connected at Penn State. Reminder to get buckled up, hands on the wheel, eyes and minds straight ahead. The driver has one job, that's to drive. This message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Hail Varsity Radio rolls forward as we are presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. We'll get to some of your phone calls. Evan Bland, thoughts on the Big Red coming up with the World Herald. Hail Varsity continues. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. Big thanks to Matt Millen. We say hi to Evan Bland, Omaha World Herald, as Nebraska-Indiana set to go. Evan, how's your Wednesday? Thanks for the time today.
Yeah, doing great, man. It's starting to feel like fall, right? Like you get the hot games, and now it really feels like football season, so it's all good.
No, it is just pleasant out. It is so gorgeous, sun-drenched, perfect chill in the air.
Schmidt, we have to do like an Oklahoma drill outside after the show or something.
I'm gonna go find 7,000 pounds of meat to put on my grill drill.
That's a good alternative.
Is what I'm looking at. Evan, okay, biggest confidence and biggest concern for Saturday if you're Nebraska?
Well, my biggest confidence, I think, is the game in general. I think there are going to be a lot of points. This feels like a shootout under the lights to me. You look at what Indiana's defense has been able to do, what it hasn't been able to do, and it's a lot of similar struggles to Nebraska. It's been lousy on third down, stopping third down, that is. The running lanes have been there, the passing opportunities as well, and so I anticipate Nebraska is going to be able to move the ball pretty well. I think Casey Thompson has a bounce-back game if you know kind of what drives him and how he prepares. I think Anthony Grant has a good game too, so I would expect the offense to move the ball. The biggest concern, I suppose, would be on the other side. What can the defense do? How much of an impact can Bill Busch make as with 1 week as defensive coordinator? How much can they shore up some of the gap integrity and just the struggles in the trenches that they've had? And I think more than that, what Indiana presents as a challenge, guys, is they play with a tempo. They pass right now more attempts per game than anyone else in the FBS, and so what that does for Nebraska's secondary is it means they need to tackle in space. They need to be assignment sound, because if you miss that first, that first tackle is missed, then suddenly a 3 or 4 yard gain turns into 10 or 15 or something else. So, I think again, there's a lot for that defense to show that it's improved upon, and again, Indiana's strength and offense, I think, will test that.
Evan, I was really impressed when I watched Indiana take on Illinois a couple weeks ago. Now, I was really impressed with how Indiana, how physical they were at the point of attack. And my question for you is, what is your concern level with Nebraska's offensive line on Saturday night up against Indiana?
Well, I mean, they have some new pieces, right? I mean, Ethan Piper's the starter there at left guard. They shuffled Turner Corcoran around a little bit onto left tackle to fill in for Teddy, who's out for the year. So, it's not a great situation there. I think they're already having to dig pretty deep into the depth chart when you talk about injuries and the suspension to Nuri and everything else going on. But, again, I think Anthony Grant's going to have a good game. What he's shown against every team not named Oklahoma has been really impressive, and Indiana has shown that it's not immune to giving up some big ground games to some talented backs. I mean, just ask Chase Brown from Illinois in that opener. I think he was a yard shy of 200. So I anticipate that they'll still be able to move that thing. Now, how Indiana does it and how Tom Allen does it is they're going to take some chances. They're going to get probably 2 or 3 sacks. Have some tackles for loss, but they're also, because they take those chances, they're going to give up some big plays. And again, even if Nebraska scores 35 and looks good, I don't know that their problems are solved. But again, I think they're going to have a good chance to score some points to bounce back from what is still a really good Oklahoma defense 2 weeks ago. And I would expect them to be able to move the ball pretty well.
Evan Bland with us, Omaha World Herald, talking Nebraska, Indiana. Evan, the offensive line is a major concern for me with Nebraska protection, and Allen's aggressive. I know Indiana's been giving up a lot of points, but they do have some athletes, and I thought their secondary is probably their strength. I mean, they have some guys. They're just not Indiana of 2020.
And I just think the concern here with the offensive line is the fact that 1 or 2 breakdowns in a game that could be a high-scoring shootout could lose you a game.
Yeah, it flips you either a possession or a strip sack or pick six, whatever, right? You get your quarterback smushed. What's your read, or more so the why? Why do you think Nebraska doesn't have alternative options on the line or at tackle? They're just going to ride with some of these high-profile guys that have seen some football that still haven't developed, or maybe that's part of Saturday night. I'm not writing any of them off, but it's been an Achilles heel for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's the O-line. We talked about it all off season, right? It's not a surprise. I don't think that they've struggled a little bit, but I do think some of the struggles have been obscured by bigger struggles elsewhere, obviously on the defense, and special teams hasn't really gotten going, even though it hasn't been the liability that it was. But, they still have a new position coach who's still learning things. They still have a new offensive coordinator. Some of it comes down to the discussion we've had at other positions too, where how much value or how much weight maybe do you put on what a guy does in practice versus what he does in the game. And as we've known, this staff has put a ton of weight on practice and how guys have performed and how reliable they are, how much they know what to do at a certain call. And I think there's some frustration there because, certainly if you're on the outside looking, you say, why don't you give Brant Banks a chance? Why don't you give, Ethan Piper's going to get his chance now. Why don't you give some of these younger guys a look? And the answer may just be because they don't have anybody else they either trust or anybody else they feel can get the job done even to that level. So it's not a great situation. Hunter Anthony, I think, is another option. Someone who came from Oklahoma State and who had some time there. He's somebody that why not? Why not give him a look and see what he can do? As someone who started with a Power 5 team before too, but I think some of it too has been Anthony Grant has honestly bailed him out a couple of times, right? Like some of the individual efforts that he's made, cutbacks, things that he's seen. So this is when we really start to figure it out, right? Because if they do struggle to move the ball against Indiana, then you're in deep trouble moving forward into the rest of that Big Ten slate when these defenses start to get tougher, particularly into the month of November. Like this to me is a game where you do have to build some confidence. You have to this week and next week with Rutgers. These are games that, if nothing else, Nebraska needs to be competitive to hang your head on something and to say we can build towards something in the second half of the season. Because if they get run this weekend or next weekend, it's just really hard to lay out a path in which they can recover and be competitive down the stretch.
So, Evan, in your opinion, is this game this weekend kind of the sign to you whether or not this is a lost season for Nebraska? I think some fans have already written it off as a lost season because of all the change and the turnover in the coaching staff, but I don't think the team believes that it's a lost season just yet. But could that change for you on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like sort of a big game because you can kind of write off the Oklahoma game, right? Like they were a top 10 team. Plus, there was such a short turnaround from the coaching change to when they got on the field that you could say, okay, you're really not going to change much in 5 or 6 days. But coming off of the bye, facing a team that on paper is very similarly talented to Nebraska, I think it's a game where you need to, again, at least be competitive. You need to show that you can make in-game adjustments. You need to be sound from a strategy perspective. It'll be interesting to see how much Nebraska wants to slow down the tempo. Mickey Joseph indicated they would, but to what extent do you do that to protect the defense? So, I do think when you're a team facing your peer in a lot of ways, and I think right now Indiana is sort of the East version of Nebraska, then you need to be competitive. You need to show that there are other ways that you can win the game other than just, being the better team like they were against North Dakota. And this is a big week for that. And if they get blown out and if they lose by double digits and things don't look good, again, it's hard to sort of make a case that things are going to get better as the competition gets tougher.
Schmidt, I don't mean to step on your toes here, but really fast, just saying Indiana.
Step away, brother.
Saying Indiana is the East Division version of Nebraska it's generous to Nebraska.
Yeah, maybe so. But you look at how these teams were coming into the year, right? Like these were two teams that if you were to set in June when they met, these would have been two programs potentially with coaches on the hot seat. Like Tom Allen was sort of feeling it a little bit after they, had what they would consider to be a lost season last year. And what have they done? I mean, they're 3-1, but 2 of their wins are by 3 points. Nebraska's 1-3, and 2 of their losses are by 3 points. So if nothing else, Indiana has shown a propensity for winning, at least this season, in some tight situations, maybe when they shouldn't. Nebraska's gone the other way on that. But ultimately, in the hierarchy of things, it's not something Nebraska fans want to hear. It sounds kind of weird to say that those programs are on equal footing, but right now, in a lot of ways, certainly from an on-field perspective, that's where it stands. And so that's why it's such an interesting sort of litmus test or barometer for Nebraska this weekend.
Ken emails in, and Elijah, you have come a long way to the dark side of negativity. Kent says congratulations. Evan Bland with us. Evan, about 90 seconds, bud. A thought from you. What name has picked up steam or got your wheels turning out there with the coaching carousel?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm actually going to be. I'm going to go down to Kansas this weekend and catch the Matt Campbell Lance Leipold Bowl. I guess
Trev Alberts Bowl.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. So those two guys, to me, are both really interesting for different reasons. They're both former Division III grinders who turned around MAC schools, and now they're doing the same at Big 12 schools that have, as Nebraska fans know, historically very little success. And so I think their formula of adjusting, they have a history of adjusting to their personnel. They have a history of building relationships. They have a history of being, genuine guys, culture builders, and then that sort of translates out onto the field. I'm going to be watching both of those guys. I think it's really fascinating with the continuity that they have, the identities that they've built. They're different ages, right? Matt Campbell's in his early 40s, Lance Leipold's in his late 50s, but again, just sort of their Midwest ties. I really believe that has to be a priority with Nebraska's next head coach. Is you got to have a staff and the head coach who have Midwest connections, who can recruit locally in that 500-mile radius. I think that's more important in this era when everybody has facilities and money and exposure. Like, you need guys who have roots, who have pride for this area, and so I think that's one reason that those two guys are particularly attractive candidates.
Evan, last thought, about 10 seconds. Waka Flocka, yes or no?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's an endorsement. I love it. Now,
ringing endorsement.
Yeah, it is. We'll get caught up again, Evan. Good stuff. Good for you. We had toyed with going down to Lawrence for a pregame and then trying to get back for another pregame kickoff, Indiana, Nebraska. Just can't logistically do it. You have a good trip, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks, guys.
There he is, Evan Bland with us from the World Herald. Jock Doc's on the way with Dr. Ben Woodhead.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday with Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Ben Woodhead with us. Dr. Ben, how we doing?
I'm doing great this week, Chris. How about yourself?
Man, it is sparkling weather out this week. It's football season, and you really can't complain. Although, if you ask Bill Belichick, day to day is how he would list Mac Jones, the New England quarterback, as he had to be carried off like a European soccer player. The difference being, well, Mac Jones has one monster of a high ankle sprain, Dr. Ben.
Yeah, these are tough injuries. That's the problem, is that you certainly can have a low ankle sprain and a high ankle sprain. The problem is when you get up in the higher region, they can linger, they can last forever. Sometimes they even require a surgical type procedure. I guess a lot of it just depends on the severity of how bad he hurt it, and I guess we'll see how he does.
Well, you have a game against Green Bay Sunday. Belichick stiff arm most of the questions while he's day to day, and I can hear Bill's dulcet tones saying, well, he's day to day. But tell me about the ability to make progress. As awful as it looked, where he's getting carried off, how do you get, playable? How do you get better that quickly, aside from Mr. Miyagi?
Well, with these high ankle sprains, the force that goes through the ankle when you tear those ligaments, it's just a very high amount of force. And so sometimes you'll tear those ligaments, they'll be unstable. You really are waiting for that swelling and that stability to kind of go down and then come back in the ankle. And it makes it very difficult because the healing phase for these can be up to 6 to 8 weeks. It's not like one of the usual ankle sprains you hear about where you twist your foot a little bit, you swell for a couple days, and then you gradually get back with an ankle brace. This can be a very severe injury and a lingering injury. And he's certainly not going to say much because he doesn't want anybody, to tip off on it. But at the same time, these can be a bad actor.
Dr. Ben Woodhead is with us here, a Jock Doc Wednesday on Hail Varsity Radio. And Dr. Ben, I think the best part of Belichick's press conference this morning was whenever he was asked about it, he said, "What do I look like, a doctor?" And I think what's awesome is now we are talking with a doctor about this. And you talk about the surgical intervention that's sometimes required for an injury like this. What is fixed during a surgery like that? It doesn't seem like an ankle sprain is something you'd usually require surgery for. So what is being done if surgery is required here?
Well, so certainly if it's a lower ankle sprain, you never start with surgery. Sometimes they can go in if the ankle is somewhat unstable later on, and you can fix the ligaments. When you get a bad high ankle sprain, though, you have ligaments that are in between your shin bone and your fibula or your outside bone. And so if that gets torn in the sense that the ankle will widen, you actually will have to go in there and surgically place a type of device that holds those two bones together. Now, it doesn't sound like that's what is going on with Mac Jones, but certainly these injuries can be severe enough that they can go in there, they will actually have to hold those bones together and allow those ligaments to heal over time.
Dr. Ben Woodhead is with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Mac Jones, the high ankle sprain, and is he going to be ready to go on Sunday or not? Bill Belichick really doing his best protection here on the quarterback with the media. Bill went as far as to say, "I'm not going to let you read his MRI." And you know a little bit about Bill, just from a family standpoint, with what it's like to have blood playing for the guy.
Yeah, and my stories, how much I've actually been told the truth is hard to say as well, because he keeps everybody that plays for him tight-lipped. But I certainly know the Belichick story and how he has his players and the information out there in New England. He really keeps it a tight lip, and he does not allow basically any of the information out. And so I certainly know that is a real thing, that he will not give any information that he does not have to, and keeps everybody guessing. And that's kind of been his mantra for years.
Absolutely. So say Mac is a go. How effective can he be? And I'm not sure if it's right, high ankle, or left, but we're back to whether it's the plant foot or that front left leg if he's following through on a pass, let alone the mobility needed with even the pro-style offense New England uses.
Yeah, I mean, just from an opinion standpoint, if it truly is a high ankle sprain, and if it's the severity that he had to be carried off, I would be surprised if he is a full go. I think it's going to be very difficult. There's not that much amount of tape in an ankle brace that's going to provide that much stability to where he's going to be able to function at 100% if he truly did have that type of high ankle sprain. Now, if he had a lower ankle sprain, he could certainly be more of a day-to-day, see how he does with the swelling, get the ice, get basically, some of the stability out of tape in the ankle and with an ankle brace. But, if it's truly high ankle, I think it's going to be hard for him to go at it.
Now, Dr. Ben, Mac Jones not the only athlete suffering a high ankle sprain over the weekend, as Trent Williams from the 49ers did, Kevin Williams, Nebraska offensive lineman, did. And just with these guys as a whole, what is this return like? I mean, when you think of a low ankle sprain, you kind of think of playing through the pain. Is it similar with the high ankle sprain, or are there other risk factors here for these guys getting back onto the field?
Well, there's just a lot more pain and swelling generally with these high ankle sprains. They will classify the lower ankle sprains in grades depending on which ligament was affected. And a lot of that is kind of correlated to the amount of stability that's there. So if you just tweak the ligament and you just get swelling, you're really just relying on the swelling to get better, and to where you can get your function back. Now, the problem is once you get into those higher ankle sprains and you actually do tear some of the ligaments, you're really waiting for that healing phase and for that ligament to scar in. And so until that improves and until the healing takes place, it's going to be very difficult to cut, to pivot, to run. And so that's why the high ankle sprain, it really can be much more of a problem for these athletes.
Yeah, and coming back, Dr. Ben, is this something that could derail a season in terms of the re-injury risk moving forward on a football field?
I don't know if it's going to re-injure necessarily as much as just might linger for some time. And so, like I said, these high ankle sprains, they take a while to recover. And so it's certainly going to place him at a re-injury risk if he's favoring it, or he could certainly hurt something else if he goes back before he's 100%, because he is not going to click on all cylinders. He's not going to be 100% in terms of his speed and cutting. It certainly can place him at risk for other injuries.
Dr. Ben Woodhead with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Mac Jones, our topic. Real quick, Dr. Ben, ice, electrodes, elevation, I mean, is that all part of the recovery?
Absolutely. The RICE therapy that we often hear about is you elevate as much as you can. They're going to have rehab working on him. They're going to be doing all the new modalities to try and get the swelling down, because once the swelling goes down and his symptoms get better, he can certainly try. The biggest issue is, though, is he going to have stability of that? Is it still going to hurt? Is it going to, if it is his left, is he going to be able to plant and run on it and make the cuts that he needs?
Well, isn't that incredible, Dr. Ben, that whether you drop your phone in water, whether it's a high ankle sprain, that the fix is always rice?
Exactly.
Man, who knew, right? we just we just thought it was what it was for dinner. I mean, Dr. Ben Woodhead with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Ben, enjoy the week. Thanks for the time today.
You guys too. Pleasure talking with you.
Good stuff from Dr. Ben Woodhead, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. We'll get to some final tweets, some emails, and Belichick specifically on the Mac Jones denial. And get you ready for a Thursday. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Wednesday, it's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Friday, we are at the Single Barrel in the Haymarket, downtown Lincoln. Come see us and get fired up for Nebraska-Indiana. We're also there for the weekend edition pregame at 3:30 to 5:30 ahead of Nebraska-Indiana. So Steve tweets in a bit ago about Lance getting the extension at Kansas. That's probably on the table. You've had a warning shot fired by the Kansas AD. We're not going to lose him without a fight, or something. I'm paraphrasing to the effect that he'll get a bump and probably a naughty buyout. Troy checks in. I like Leipold. And everyone says, well, he's won at every stop. But I think to myself, that so did Tim Miles. I'm hoping for Mark Stoops or Aranda. Never happened. But I like the Washington coach, Kalen DeBoer. He's from Sioux Falls. It might be the University of Sioux Falls. He's similar to what Lance did at Whitewater. I mean, your record's like 99-3. The difference is Leipold's won championships or gotten to championships, right? Tim Miles got to the dance, different sport. But Tim Miles wasn't cranking out Mountain West championships. Lance has won national championships. So that remains a hot name as Nebraska will try and get it done, Elijah. Tomorrow on the show, Dr. Rob Zadiska, Husker Pipeline.
Love
Mr.
Dr. Rob.
Offensive lineman.
Love Dr. Rob.
Dr. Rob will be with us. Gary Barnett with us. Brandon Vogel. VSiN Sports Network's Danny Burke for Best Bets. We'll also hear from Mickey Joseph ahead of Nebraska-Indiana. You're going to want to check out today. Great stuff from Mike Babcock and Mike Schuchart. Matt Millen was incredible with some old Oakland Raiders stories and what they did to poor John Elway all those years in Denver, and really some honest feedback on what he sees with Nebraska. And you'll want to hear what he has to say about Bill O'Brien. That's a name that's been out there for the Nebraska gig. And Matt knows O'Brien from his time at Penn State because, of course, Millen's an old Penn State guy. Good stuff from Evan Bland as well. Big ball game for the Nebraska offensive line Saturday. They're all big. But if you're going to be in a potential score fest, Elijah, your line's got to not be the failure, not give up a 3rd and 8 scoop and score or blindside or let's get Casey injured or whoever's playing quarterback because you get beat off the edge. Because you know Tom Allen's going to bring the kitchen sink.
Just a question of what this offensive line was able to do over the bye week. Did they get better day by day?
Well, we don't know their ceiling. They can work all they want, right? They can get better. But is their strength going to be able to fire off the ball, drive block? Is Nebraska, without any quarterback run element, going to be able to get 3 a carry, 4 a carry? Keep it in second and manageable?
Well, I can just tell you right now, they're not even close to their ceiling. I'll say that. I'm confident in saying that this is not a offensive line that is just, so much further behind the rest of the Big Ten. They're not close to their ceiling.
Yep, they'll keep working towards it. Back at you tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.